Colossus is the most advanced lineup optimizer in daily fantasy sports. Lock and exclude players. Adjust player exposure to reduce risk of injury or poor performance. Customize individual projections or upload your own projections. Generate hundreds of optimal lineups in seconds. Name and save the best lineups. Create winning lineups for the top sites like DraftKings and FanDuel for free at dailyfantasycafe.com.
Hello and welcome to the Audible Quarterback Analysis Podcast. I'm Big Italy 42 here, breaking down some top plays, as always, from our writer here at Zach Scott Moxie on Twitter. And we're starting off with his elite cash game play, fresh off a bye week. Mr. Tom Brady for the New England Patriots, coming in at $8,800 on FanDuel, $7,800 on DraftKings. Vegas team total is huge again at 28.5 points, and this is a team facing off against a Dallas defense that has been unable to make big plays when it has mattered. They have given up a lot of big performances, Philly game aside for the most part, but too many big plays, and this is a team, as Zach points out here, 256 yards a game through the air, 7.1 yards per attempt. The worst part is they've only forced 3 turnovers, and 1.5 sacks per game is not good either, so with that offensive line behind him, or in front of him, I should say, for Tom Brady, yes, you're going to have to pay a pretty penny, but he has an enormous floor in this game, very high ceiling as well if the Cowboys keep it competitive on the offensive end. So Tom Brady, I'm in agreement here, got to be one of your top plays there. Eli Manning for the Giants, $7,700 on FanDuel, $68 on DraftKings, Vegas team total of 25, and 49ers defense now that was admirable last week against the Packers, but that's that's a rivalry game. This has not been a good defensive unit at all this year. This is a team that got up, they played well last week against the Packers, holding them to 17 points. Obviously, the offense didn't do them any favors there, but looking at this defense, they're allowing 9.2 yards per attempt, 263 yards per game, 2 turnovers total, and Eli quietly having a very good season, 7 touchdowns, just 1 interception, and facing a secondary that's really, really struggling. I think he makes for a great play in all formats, really, this week against the 49ers. Value cash game play, he's got Sam Bradford, a guy who, beginning of last week, I received some tweets, other people tweeting out, is it time to get rid of Sam Bradford? Is Sam Bradford done? What are your options with the Eagles? Things of that nature. But turned it around with 3 touchdown passes last week, ended up with 270 yards and 3 touchdowns after a slow start. It's a Saints team that giving up the second most fantasy points per game, as Zach points out here, 21.3, depending on what site you're looking at for scoring. But also a league worst 116.3 rating to quarterback, 9.8 yards per attempt. Eagles team total nearly 27 points. Sam Bradford, his cheap salary, $7,500 on FanDuel, $6K on DraftKings. Certainly has big upside and should have a nice floor against this weak defense as well. Next up, Ty Taylor. The first half last week was incredibly frustrating if you were like me and you had Tyrod in some cash games, especially on FanDuel. But second half, he ended up making it a decent performance. Ended up with a fine performance, had a touchdown run called back, had a touchdown pass called back. So could have been a much different story. Ended up with a decent amount of points considering his team really wasn't even that close. But a couple red zone mistakes by them, a couple times they got stopped on 4th down. So certainly a guy that didn't play nearly as bad as the stat line seems like. Bill's really hurting in the backfield. LaShawn McCoy now out. You've got Carlos Williams dealing with a concussion. We're not sure if he'll be able to suit up for this weekend or not. So Taylor going to be the guy this week, and looking like Boobie Dixon could end up being the guy in the backfield. And that's if Carlos Williams can't go. So a lot going to be sitting on Tyrod Taylor's shoulders this week. Just a 23-point Vegas total, but as we know, Tyrod with his legs and his arm, a nice floor, and he should be accounting for quite a bit of the offense here. And this is a game against Tennessee that's giving up 8.2 yards per attempt and has allowed 6 touchdowns so far. They've only given up 78 attempts, but a lot of that being the fact they've been bad against the run. So this is a situation where Tyrod Taylor could, really meet and exceed that price tag of $7,500 on FanDuel, $58 on DraftKings. So I'm a big fan of Tyrod Taylor. There's a little bit of a value play there. Peyton Manning, next up, he has him in the elite GPP category, $8,200 on FanDuel, $7,000 on DraftKings. Vegas team total just north of 23 points. We saw week 1, he struggled. Week 2, he looked phenomenal with 3 scores. And last week did not look good. 2 interceptions, a narrow victory. The defense and the running game, namely Ronnie Hillman on that long run, ended up paying off for them as they moved and remained undefeated. But now facing a Raiders team allowing the 5th most fantasy points a game per quarterback, 2 touchdowns a game, and 311 passing yards a game, which is 31st. So this is an Oakland secondary that has been just absolutely gashed by just about everyone that they faced. Jay Cutler had a great game against them last week. Look for Peyton Manning to have a bounce-back week here against a team that's just giving up a ton of yardage. Phillip Rivers, high-scoring quarterback from last week, 7,500 on FanDuel, 62 on DraftKings. Monday Night Football against the Steelers. And Rivers, as Zach mentioned here, kind of the forgotten man when people talk about best quarterbacks. And he's been very good so far, averaging over 300 yards a game, 2 scores per game. Steelers have been about an average defense, but they did have that one really bad performance against the Patriots in week 1. And obviously Rivers, a lot's going to fall on him. Melvin Gordon hasn't really gotten it going, but you've got weapons that have produced in the short passing game. You've got Keaton Allen has had a couple huge games. Stevie Johnson, if he goes this week, he's been good. Danny Woodhead's been key, over 140 yards last week. So definitely a lot to go around. Phillip Rivers has plenty of weapons to be able to put up big numbers without big chunk plays here. So you got to like his options, his potential here. Value GPP play, this one kind of off the board here. Jameis Winston, $6,400, FanDuel, 51 on DraftKings. Vegas team total just below 23 points. He's shown his moments, but looked terrible at other times. And he's facing a Jags defense that has been awful against the pass. 279 yards a game, 7.2 yards per attempt. And Winston has really been struggling with turning over the ball, but only 1 interception on the season for the Jags, only 6 the entire season last year. And Winston, as Zach mentions here, despite not playing particularly well, averaging more fantasy points per game than Peyton Manning, Sam Bradford, Jay Cutler, to name a few. So he's an upside play there, certainly a GPP option, but nice low ownership guy with some potential to put up some numbers there. Last guy on the board, Alex Smith. We saw him on the $1 million winning lineup on FanDuel week 1. We know he has upside. Threw for over 300 yards last week against the Bengals and facing a Chicago Bears defense that has allowed 10 passing touchdowns so far this season, 31st in the NFL, 7.3 yards per attempt, and they're not getting to the quarterback. That was the big thing that hurt Alex Smith last week against the Bengals with sacks. Bears just 1.5 sacks per game, and he's been sacked 19 times so far this season. So he only has 4 total touchdown passes this season, 3 of them coming in the first week, but a season average of 277 yards is not bad. So for a team with a Vegas team total of 27.5, especially when you've seen Jamal Charles being a huge part of the passing game, Alex Smith doesn't have to throw the ball down the field to get a touchdown. Dump it off to Charles, dump it off to Travis Kelce, or even Jeremy Maclin, who's really emerged back-to-back 100-yard games. So plenty of weapons for Alex Smith to end up paying off this price tag and then some. So that's going to wrap things up here for this week for the quarterback analysis. You can find us on Twitter at DF Cafe. He is at Zach Scott Moxie. Check out the rest of our great content at dailyfantasycafe.com and subscribe to this YouTube channel. Check out the rest of the great content we have here as well. And we'll see you guys next time.